With the new Codex Space Marines, we've seen huge changes to the Wargear, and it's really made a lot of the Wargear options that you never saw on the table a lot more viable. Today, what we're going to do is go through 9 units that have some of the most Wargear options and talk through what are the best choices for you to put on the tabletop. So not every unit in the Space Marine Codex has a lot of Wargear choices, but there's a few units that have a ton, and then there's a few units that have a few really hard options to pick between. And it can be tough when you're first kind of picking up your army or even, choosing what to build to say what Wargear should you pick. And one of the nice things is in this codex, they've made almost every Wargear option viable. So no matter what you have, you could put it on the table, but that doesn't mean that that every one of them is equal to one another. In most cases, there is a right answer.
That's correct.
And in some units, maybe 3 or 4, there's several right answers. But we have preferences.
They'll be sort of dictated by things like your playstyle, your chapter selection, and your overall army composition.
So that's it. What we're going to do, 9 units. We're just going to go through, talk about if it's an absolute right answer or what our preferred style is. Why don't you start us off with the first unit?
All right, so we want to talk first of all about the Primaris Captain. Now we really have 2 loadouts that we think are the most effective, and we're really looking at the difference between those 2. So one is the Gravis Captain. This is actually from the Dark Imperium box originally.
This is a captain you never saw on the tabletop. Most of us own a bunch of them because people were just giving them away, but now he's actually really interesting.
He's really saucy. So what he gives you kind of to differentiate him from a regular Primaris Captain is you get the additional wound and the additional toughness from Gravis armor.
When you say additional wound, that's 7 wounds. He is really super tough.
That's right.
He also has some good Wargear.
He does. He actually comes equipped with a Power Fist, with a, they say a Boltstorm Gauntlet, but it's really a mini pistol version. That's fine. And a Mastercrafted Power Sword. So that's his Wargear. He, of course, has the Iron Halo. That stuff doesn't change. So that's him. And we have to say the Power Fist has changed. The Power Fist is flat 2 damage, which is much better than the D3 it used to be. Still ×2 strength and -3 AP. But many things have changed as in regards to things like Thunderhammers that make the Power Fist all of a sudden the kind of the better choice over the Thunderhammer most of the time. And so where you wanted captains with Thunderhammers, all of a sudden captains with Power Fists are exciting. This is a particularly good captain with a Power Fist. I might be wrong, but he's about 115 points. That's a very fair points cost for his unbelievable stat line, and actually 2 great weapons, because even the Mastercrafted Power Sword is excellent. It's nice to have those different options, right? You can have one that has high strength, the other one that just doesn't get the minuses to hit, which again, you don't get the rerolls anymore, so that all matters. And as you mentioned about the Power Fist, that matters so much, especially given when we look at things like the other captain, there's many ways to actually get bonuses to your armor save. So it's really important that we keep that -3 rend. He also is uniquely equipped to be able to have the unyielding stratagem, so +1 armor against damage 1. That makes him much more resilient against plink damage and basically hordes, right? Because enough shots,
he's extremely durable.
That's right.
So I'd say we both like him just a little better. Although this other captain is probably an equivalent. This guy is a cool style pick because he's a deep cut. Like you never really saw him, right? This next one is the brand new captain that came in the Indominus box.
That's right.
He has a special skulled out, or it's a full skeletoned out shield, and he has. He also has a Relic Power Sword as well.
That's right.
And this shield does something unique that no other shield does. It does give you the 2-up save. It doesn't give you a 4-up invuln because you already have that from your Iron Halo. Instead, it gives you a 4-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds, which is a really good defense against mortal wounds.
It actually is, because there's a lot of key cases where enemies have ways of actually targeting your characters. We even see things like the new Catans have ways of doing this. And ultimately, the captain is definitely moving into his role as a support unit. So if they can actually target him out, that actually has a huge impact on the rest of your army. So it's a nice, cute little thing that actually is very, very powerful.
Now there's no good way to get to him. He's got a great save. He's got a solid invuln.
That used to be the way.
And now he has mortal wound protection. He's pretty tough.
Big deal.
And the Power Sword is all of a sudden an interesting weapon, especially the Mastercrafted. So he has a really good output, kind of similar output to the other captain in many ways. So you could see these 2 captains, we think they're roughly equivalent, and they're way better now than the old Jump Pack Thunderhammers, because those captains just don't do what they used to do. So all of a sudden, these captains became the best loadout for Space Marine captains.
Absolutely. And the Indominus does get the new Storm Shield rule, so he will always be at a 2-up, whereas the Gravis has to spend a strat, and it's only against certain strats.
Right.
But he has more wounds. So they're ultimately very, very close. I think myself personally, and I believe you agree, Brian, we do tend towards the Gravis just because the points are so close that you spend a few more points.
It's a 10 points difference.
It's 10 points to get all that extra durability, the extra options on your weapons.
That's right.
So we do like that, but to be honest, you wouldn't be wrong to field either of these in your Space Marines.
They're both good. Okay, the next one is going to be the backbone of your army. This is the Intercessors, one of the best troop choices in the game. We're talking specifically about the, not the Assault Intercessors, but the basic Intercessors.
The classics.
And these ones, I think, do have some right answers. They used to, they have 3 different bolt rifles. Right, they have the assault bolt rifles, the actual bolt rifle, and then the stalker bolt rifle. And in 8th edition, you actually saw a lot of play from the stalker bolt rifle. But now, because you can't stay in the heavy doctrine or the Devastator doctrine all game, that becomes a lot less valuable. And now we fall back to the bolt rifle, which is the rapid fire version, being kind of definitively the better weapon in almost all cases.
It really is the most flexible. It is a rapid fire weapon, so you're going to get your tactical doctrine for at least 1 turn, 2 if you want it. And the other thing is Chapter Masters changed, right? It's not everything within 6 inches. So I used to run tons of Stalkers and just give them Chapter Master. You really don't care.
Even with that -1 to hit when you walked with heavy weapons.
Exactly.
Right?
So you're hitting on 4s, but it was re-rolling. Now you can't really do that. Conversely, the auto weapons are perhaps still interesting for people like White Scars.
Sure.
But almost every other case, you're going to still be looking at the auto
because it has AP.
Weapons. The AP is everything.
Yeah, so the assault version has no AP. Almost no one wants to take that. If your unit's going to be advancing every turn, like you said, White Scars, cool. Even then, you'll find that these Intercessors at the backfield, they're not always that advancing, and the AP is crucial.
Yeah, so really about that AP and that consistency, right?
Definitely. The Sergeant has a ton of options.
He does.
And we used to see in 8th edition a lot of Thunderhammers because it's a devastating weapon. The Thunderhammer took a nerf in multiple ways. Not only did it lose an AP, you lost a lot of rerolls that you used to have, and it's 20 points now on an Intercessor. That makes the Thunderhammer all but kind of dead to me. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to put a Thunderhammer, but it all of a sudden makes the next in line, the Power Fist. I would definitely say the Power Fist is the equivalent, is now your equivalent to the Thunderhammer, and I would take that on any Intercessor squad going up the field that I really want to kit out for combat.
It's really hard to say no to this. The Thunderhammer was 15 points for the squad leader, and it was still amazing. Again, that one went up, but the Power Fist is down at 8 points.
I think it might be 10 on an Intercessor.
10 points for the Intercessor. So it's cheaper even than the Thunderhammer was when it was amazing. And so
at that flat 2 damage, -3 AP.
Great. And you're buried behind all those wounds. You get a ton of attacks. It's really, really powerful. So even your shooty Intercessor squads, it's very powerful.
They're scary because 4 attacks, it's good.
It's great. It's no joke.
Yeah, but if you didn't want to put the Power Fist on, and I get it, not every time you want to and not every time you have the points, you should always put a Chainsword.
That's right.
Because Chainswords are entirely free. Your Sergeant doesn't have to give up the gun. Doesn't give up anything.
No.
Entirely free, and it gives you an extra attack, and all your attacks have AP1.
That's great.
So all of a sudden you have 5 attacks at AP1 with that Sergeant. That is vicious. It's an auto-include. In fact, it might even be better than the Power Fist in so many matchups.
Sure.
So because you might not have all the rerolls. So the Chainsword is a big, big winner, and the Power Fist is kind of second in line.
Yeah, totally agree.
What's the next unit?
So the next one we're going to be talking about is the bigger cousins of the Intercessors, the heavy Intercessors. These, of course, are the new Gravis-style Intercessors, extra wound, extra toughness, and some very interesting weapons choices.
Super confusing weapons choices also.
Oh my goodness, they really are. So let's actually just first clarify that. You essentially have the assault-like version, the middle range version, and then the heavy version. Really, we're not big fans of the lightest version that has the most shots. It just doesn't hit that sweet spot between stats. So we're going to talk primarily about the other two and why you should take them in different scenarios.
Yes, that's right. And so one of the standout weapons for them is the Executor. This is the heavy version. Right? And it's a pretty interesting weapon. But one of the downsides is the fact that it is heavy, and it means that whenever you move and shoot, you're going to take a penalty. So I really like this weapon if you're going to be taking it on a unit that's either a small 5-man squad in your backfield, where it's going to sit on an objective and not move for several turns, then you're not taking too much of a penalty. The alternative is if you wanted to take it in a big squad, maybe a 10-man squad, have it march up the field and get rerolls, particularly your Chapter Master reroll, because that will allow it to cut through those minuses to hit. If you're doing either of those scenarios, the Executor is the weapon for me. And if you're taking the Executor, I would always upgrade one to the heavy version. That one's 3 damage, right?
That's right.
So the Executors are base 2. This one goes up to 3 damage, and you can have 1 per 5 man, I think, in the squad.
You got it.
So if you had a 5-man squad or a 10-man squad, you'd have 2 of them in the 10-man walking up the field. That's all of a sudden a scary squad, and it's worthwhile to put the Chapter Master rerolls onto it.
That's right.
Some of the time, unless you have something else big.
Yep. The rest of the time, you're going to be wanting to run the middle profile.
Yeah.
This one is rapid fire, so you're always moving without penalties. You still get a strength 5 -1, 1 damage, so it's still a solid weapon. The thing to note about that is their special weapon, the 1 in 5 weapon, is a heavy bolter. Your traditional heavy bolter.
Yeah.
Now this one actually is a big mismatch, right? Because rapid fire, you're happy to be moving the entire time.
That's
the heavy bolter, you're not. You got -1 to hit if you moved. It's not any better at close range than not. So
that's right.
I think more often than not, we would actually pass on the heavy bolter and just take more of that rapid fire profile.
That's right. The rapid fire one's called the heavy bolt rifle. I know they all have roughly the same names, so this is probably one of the worst namings GW has done. So the heavy bolt rifle is the rapid fire version. We like this one probably for more cases.
Yeah.
If you're taking just 5-man squads, they're going to be all over the board. They're going to be playing the game. These are not the best units for running up the board because they have less movement.
Yeah.
But hey, they're super tough, so they can really do whatever you want. And I agree. I would never take the heavy bolter upgrade just because of that mismatch. The range mismatch,
so weird.
But also it's extra points. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the heavy intercessors. Let's move on to one of the toughest units, the Vanguard veterans.
It is.
This is a unit that has a long list of potential weapon options, and even within a squad, you can mix and match. Although we don't normally advise that.
That's right. Yeah, this is a very interesting. There's a lot of very interesting options for the Vanguard veterans, right? They move fast. They're well priced. They have 19 points base. Always spend 2 points, I think, virtually every single time to give them jump packs.
Is that 3 or 2? I think it's in that range.
It's very cheap. Yeah,
it's very
only
cheap.
The 2 points. So very interesting. And there's a couple primary situations we would look to building them towards, right? So one of the ones we want to talk about is. We're really excited to say double lightning claws.
Double lightning claws.
So fashionable.
Yeah,
they do give +1 attack for having 2 of them. So
for each of them. Because in 8th edition, it used to be called a pair of lightning claws.
Right.
And you got 1 extra attack for it. But now it's 2 individual lightning claws.
And they each give +1. Which is great. And of course, you keep the reroll to wound. And they're very, very reasonably priced.
Yes.
So you're keeping them pretty cheap. And you want to use this on your Vanguard veterans when you want them to be a melee missile. Just going in, killing as much as they can. Which is significant. They have a lot of attacks, and you're not terribly concerned about it.
Especially if they're independent, right? Because this gives them a lot of attacks, 5 attacks per model on the charge, which means a 10-man squad is 50 attacks, hitting on 3s because no minuses to hit, and then re-rolling wounds. They're actually really reliable at getting the job done with that many dice, and they're fairly cheap. And so I really, really like the double lightning claws. It looks good, and because they're 2-wound models, they're still going to die, but your opponent's going to have to put quite a bit of work into them.
Definitely take some time.
And they could, because they're cheap, they could get their points back even in 1 activation. So I love the double lightning claws. I think we're going to see it a lot more often.
It's great. Now, the other way to build them out is to actually make them quite tanky. And it's still pretty cheap, got to be honest. We're talking about the Storm Shields. This is a very classic build. Storm Shields are only, I believe, 4 points for a Vanguard veteran.
Extremely cheap.
Ridiculously cheap. So there's a couple ways you could do this, but primarily we're thinking Storm Shield, Chainsword on a bunch of them to keep them super cheap, very tanky, and then you can actually splash in a few of Power Fists.
That's right.
This used to be Thunder Hammers primarily, but the Power Fists, for all the reasons we
mentioned
before, better, cheaper, it's great. And so suddenly this becomes a very difficult to remove unit. That's getting the Storm Shield. Again, because you're a melee unit, you can do things like land, wipe a unit, pile into cover.
That's right.
Get that sweet, what is that, a 1-up save, and actually be a real pain for your opponent to remove. So it's a different tactic. I don't know if one of these is better than the other, but they're 2 different builds for playing this very useful unit.
And I think anywhere in there that we talked about, the Storm Shields, the Lightning Claws, the Chain Swords, and the Power Fists, those are the interesting weapons. And you could probably mix and match within those to your heart's content and be pretty good. I wouldn't take almost anything else other than those. Like, I'll give you a couple, like a bonus round on something.
Sure.
The Sergeant can get access to things like Relic Power Swords. That's a crazy weapon, right? It's like Strength 7, -3 or 4 for 2 damage. And it's mega cheep. So there are a few things on the Sergeant that are interesting and stand out, and go have fun with that. But generally speaking, what we've said is the way to go. I love the fact that the Chainswords have the AP. I really, really love that. But I particularly love the Lightning Claws for the reroll wounds because you got that Strength 4. And so coming up against other Toughness 4 units, you just need that extra.
So they're interesting because they're a very flexible unit too, right? You can go up against things that are higher toughness, obviously lower toughness, but they have that flexibility. The power fists are great, but you really are trying to hit something that is bigger, things like that. So it's
the lightning claws could take down a vehicle just because of the reroll wounds, right? And 50 attacks.
5's rerolling wounds. That's still great.
It's totally fine. All right, so the next one is the Aggressors, and this is the one that's actually flipped quite a bit. If you've heard, the Aggressors no longer have their ability to double shoot, and the Flamer profile, whilst not only being cheaper, actually got double the range, or not quite, but 8 to 12. So not quite, but a lot more range. Feels like double on the table. And this kind of flipped it where you always played the Bolter version before, but now all of a sudden the Flamer version is by far the better.
The threat range is so much higher, and it's much more accurate. The other thing that they also lost was the ability to advance and shoot without penalties.
That's right.
So your Bolters, you lost the double shoot, and if you want to advance, you can be hitting on 4s. Again, come back to the idea of Chapter Master and how difficult it is and who's going to take it. They become much less appealing, whereas the Flamers are just so consistent. So this one's a pretty easy entry. The Flamers are the way to go now. Yeah.
This is definitively better.
Yeah.
I feel bad because I have so many Aggressors with Bolters, and I worked so hard on them.
Yep.
They're still good. They're still good, and they're good when you think of them more as a combat unit with some shooting. And if you don't think of them as much as a shooting unit with some combat, because that's kind of how they flip. They still have a bunch of attacks with power fists, and if you have the right character support, they're still gonna do the business.
I think they could especially be interesting with like Ultra Rains, where you're still getting all the rerolls from core and stuff like that. So they're definitely not out of the game, but the Flamers are like looking in a good place.
So another type of unit that got a huge buff was Terminators, and you have many types of Terminators, but we're most excited about the Assault Terminator variant. And they have two loadouts. They have the double Lightning Claw, and then they have the Thunderhammer Storm Shield.
That's right.
Now, the double Lightning Claw, for reasons that, like we said before, is way better than it used to be, but it's not our way to go with this unit.
No, not quite. While they are cheap, clocking in at 33 points.
Which is crazy cheap.
Crazy cheap. For another 10 points, you get a real bargain. You get the Thunderhammer and the Storm Shield, either of which would basically add up to at least those 10 points.
Keep in mind, you're paying 20 points for a Thunderhammer on an Intercessor.
That's right.
And you're paying at least 5 points for a Storm Shield on like a big unit. So that's 25 points of value you're buying for 10 points only.
It's great. And they are Terminators, so you can use stratagems like Fury of the First to actually get +1 to hit. So your Terminators are back to hitting on their regular weapon skill in close combat.
Exactly.
So you're just getting a lot of value for more wounds than ever, very tough. Better than ever at actually tanking chafe wounds because of the new Storm Shield rule.
Yeah.
So they're really, really scary, really durable.
I agree.
I think you could definitely play the Lightning Claws. They're fine. They're cheap. But generally speaking, we prefer the other build.
Yeah. Now, also, once you go down to that 1-up save, even when somebody comes against you with their Thunderhammers,
that's right,
you're still getting the old Storm Shield type saves, right? So
your 1-up goes to a 3-up still.
Which is what you would have had, right?
Yeah.
So I really, really love this loadout. I think they're super durable, but also this is the best platform for that Thunderhammer. I can't think of anything better.
No. So now the next one was a very contentious one.
Yeah, this was the hardest one, right?
Studio. Yeah. This is the Hellblasters. Now the Hellblasters are quite happy. Actually, I've almost never played my Hellblasters.
I played them like ironically.
Yeah, that's right. They were just too expensive for what they did. Ultimately, they die as fast as Intercessors, and so
you paid a lot of points.
You paid so much.
Yeah.
And now, so they're 33 points. Their weapons are great. They did get some.
And there's more and more things with 3-up armor saves at 2 wounds.
Yes.
So they have no shortage of targets on the board. Right?
That's right. Now they're a weird one where we're not going to say that there's a better one in general.
There's no wrong answer on Hellblasters.
There's no wrong answer. It comes down to how you want to play or what your own personal play style is.
It's the play style not only of you personally, but the play style of the rest of your army.
Yeah, totally.
And this is because, okay, they have an assault version, a rapid fire version, and the heavy version. Now, theoretically, the assault version has the most damage output potential at close range, but it has the worst ability to wound, right? So more things would have to go your way.
Much lower strength.
The rapid fire is, as you'd expect, right there in the middle. It has a much more predictable output, and it is still a lot of output, but you have to be danger close, which you actually have to be closer than the assault bolter.
That's right, yeah.
By quite a bit. It's a 15-inch rapid fire against 24-inch assault.
That's correct.
So you have to be very, very close. Close enough that you either died getting there, or you're going to die next turn, potentially, but it's a lot of output. Now, the heavy version, you're further back, much fewer shots, but now it's up to 3 damage on the overcharge or 2 damage without overcharge, which is crucial because if they're backfield, there might not be anyone to give them rerolls. So getting that 2 damage without overcharging could be pretty interesting.
Well said. So this is really when it starts to come down to that personal preference, right? Do you want to go completely all out, get the assault ones as close as you can, get their value back in 1 or 2 volleys before they die?
Yeah.
Do you want to preserve all that value, hang them in the back? I like the heavies for this reason. It's kind of my play style. Having one hanging in the back, playing the angle game, things like that, where you're probably not gonna, you can't spike as high, right?
Yeah.
But it'll be consistent. And again,
more reliable.
They're in the back, so you're not gonna be overcharging as much because you don't have the rerolls.
That's right.
To make you not die from that. But they're just flat 2 damage. So again, consistency and the rapid fire, you can play them both ways, but they are kind of danger close, right?
Yeah, you would need another thing to keep them alive. So
yes.
I agree, the heavy version is probably the way to go because keeping them alive all game, you're gonna get more value than 1 good turn.
Sure.
And if they're back, you can choose to keep them a lot safer.
Yeah.
But the rapid fire version, if you're bringing things like impulsors or repulsors, you could make sure that they get delivered safely. Or if you're going for an army that has a lot of threat saturation, you're going really fast, really hard at your opponent, where they have too many targets, the Hellblasters might be safe mid-board for a turn or 2 while they're dealing with higher priority threats. That could work, but you're going to have an army like that.
That's right.
And the assault version could work in that variant, but I almost never like the assault version just because it only goes to strength 7.
Yeah.
And I just want that 2 up to wound most of the time.
It gives you many less targets to shoot at, right? Because they're actually strength 6 going to 7.
Yeah.
So you need to overcharge to even be able to, on average, wound your average vehicle, right?
Yeah, they're good at killing elite things.
Yeah.
But they're not as good at being multi-purpose. And the heavy version could just, when it overcharges, it could take someone's heavy intercessors out. When it's just going regular, it's just taking people's intercessor or intercessor equivalents, right?
Sure.
And there's going to be a lot of that on the board.
Yeah, very, very true.
All right, this is a great unit with certainly no wrong way to play it. It's the Eradicators.
That's right.
As of this video, they're kind of good no matter what you do. You can just kind of shove them on the board and they're good.
That's right.
But there is some right and wrong ways to pick them situationally. As you might know, they have a version of their weapon that has a heavy profile.
That's
so
right.
They can take the move and shoot penalty, which is the main downside to it. But this version does more damage.
Yeah, it
right?
always gets +2 to your damage. So it's d6 +2, or if you're in melt range, d6 +4.
So it's a lot of damage, okay?
A lot, yeah.
This gun is and it's the same price, right?
Yes.
So it's so much more damage that it's almost always the right answer.
Well, actually, I think it is a bit more.
It's not enough more, though. It's only 5 points more, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's so much more damage that if you're using them as tank killing, which is what they're for, the value is almost always there if you can ignore that move penalty.
That's right.
Now, some armies can ignore that move penalty.
Yeah,
Ultramarines move and shoot during tactical without penalty, and Iron Hands move during Devastator Doctrine without penalty, and they can pay 1 CP to be in Devastator Doctrine.
I think they're really choice
anytime.
for Iron Hands.
So Iron Hands, really, really solid. Yeah. Even Ultramarines can go either way, but Ultramarines, it works for them as well. For most others, I don't like taking the move and shoot penalty.
Correct.
Because you have so few shots, you'd rather have them hit than miss.
I'm of the same opinion. The other one, it's weird because you pair it with if you pair it with the assault weapons, well, you have, if you have a squad of 3, it's 2 of the assaults, 1 heavy, and so now you can never really advance and shoot.
That's right.
And one of them is always taking penalties, and it's this very awkward mismatch of them, right?
Yeah.
So
it's also worth noting, if you're taking the heavy squad, so if you're Iron Hands, if you're Ultramarines, those are the 2 best versions. Always upgrade to the multi-melta on your cap or on the sergeant.
Yes.
Because it's a heavy weapon anyways, and it just has more shots, and it's more shots for really good price.
It's such good value. It's like 10 points more, and it's a multi-melta, which is 2 shots, which is 4 shots if you
just the sergeant
didn't advance, which you can't.
Yes, exactly. So it's excellent. Now, for almost every other chapter, right, where you're going to be moving and shooting and taking that penalty, the Melta rifle, which is the assault version, is better because it allows you to not only not take that penalty, but also advance and shoot.
That's right.
And because they're only 24-inch range, that can make a big difference.
It's a big difference. Every time I see Eradicators across the table, I always immediately start measuring out, where's my 30-inch range, right? Because you can move 24, you can advance. Your range is 24, you move 5.
So you have a 29-inch move.
So you want to be
you have to advance
just outside.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. If you can't advance, then suddenly your opponent has very, very specific numbers of where you can and cannot shoot. So that flexibility is really powerful. The one thing we will say is if you plan on playing these in strategic reserves more often than not, or honestly, if you're Raven Guard, you can deep strike them anywhere, then things like the multi-meltas are interesting. The heavy rifles are interesting because you're just popping up, getting those
You're going to
extra
be
shots.
in range. You don't need to advance.
I think then a mixed squad of like assault and the multi-melta could be interesting.
Yeah, if you're planning to start them on the board, at the back of the board, we think the assault version is the way to go. If you're planning to outflank or deep strike, put in that multi-melta, get that extra extra bang for your buck, right?
2 more shots.
Okay, so this is the last unit, and this is the unit I think with the single most upgrades.
It is.
Although most of them you'd never consider.
Right.
This is the Devastator Marines, and this one, even though it had the most options, it actually is the least viable.
This one, this was kind of crazy to think about. This is the Devastators, of course, and they have so many different types of weapon options, many of which have seen upgrades. You know, I was excited about the Heavy Bolters because they're now 2 damage each. But at the end of the day, there was one weapon that came out on top.
Just stood out above the rest.
And unfortunately, it's the same one that was good before. It's the grav cannons.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing about grav cannons. They lost the grav amp strategy, which was a stratagem, which was reroll to wound, reroll damage.
And reroll damage, yeah.
Which was crazy until you read the new grav profile.
That's right. The new grav profile has changed quite a bit. Okay, it's still 4 shots. It's still heavy.
And strength 5 still.
It's still strength 5, but it's 6-inch more range. So it's instead of 24, it's 30-inch range.
Something like that.
And so that's already good. And it's minus 3 AP. And instead of D3 damage, it's flat 2 against anything with an armor save profile of 3 or better.
Yeah. So good. So consistent. And so when you actually start mathing that out, even for Imperial Fists, the grav is just the way to go.
Well, compare this to a Heavy Bolter.
Sure.
Okay. Heavy Bolter, 3 shots.
Yep.
Grav, 4 shots.
Yep.
Okay. Range, 30, 36.
Yeah.
That's kind of a wash for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so strength 5 against strength 5. Heavy Bolter, AP 1. Grav, AP 3. They both have 2 damage against the targets they're targeting.
Correct.
So what's the points difference?
They're identical.
They're the exact same. So the Grav weapon with 1 more shot, 2 more AP is the same points as the Heavy Bolter. Well, that's kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of shots, and when you start putting the the Signums and the Cherubs, and you start reshooting, it's just compounding. There's more shots every time.
It adds up. The biggest change that you need to know about for Grav is before with the Grav amp, you could shoot any kind of target because you're rerolling to wound. Now you are looking at you're targeting infantry and elite infantry.
They kill a lot of intercessors. So this squad, a squad of them is only about 120 points or something like that.
Yeah.
And the rate at which you kill intercessors, you make your points back every turn.
Oh, for sure.
It's crazy efficient. And because they're back and they're keeping their angles, they're really hard to pick off.
Yeah.
Now, of course, classically, people would put missile launchers or las cannons. Those are both 15 points each. And multi-meltas are 20 points each. So you would never take a multi-melta over an Eradicator.
Yeah.
Okay, an Eradicator is infinitely better in every way. And a las cannon just will not do the business for 15 points. No. 5 points less with this grav, you'll probably do more wounds to vehicle with the grav than you will with the las cannon at the end of the day.
Why is this the unit that have the 20-point multi-meltas?
I have no idea.
Very strange to me. The other thing is, of course, they are core. So often it's great to put these guys in a drop pod and you can kind of land them anywhere. But you also can keep an eye out. Where is your chapter master? Where are your captains? Drop them in range, get those rerolls, things like that. And so then you're getting more efficiency back and this becomes even more deadly.
I wouldn't even drop pod them in my mind because I would have them striking at the midboard. Whatever my opponent's putting on the midboard to hold it, I would shoot that and I would just keep them safe at the back. And I would find an angle and I would never move.
Yeah.
And that'd be my spot.
The angle game is very big because these guys are just as tough as any Space Marine, Intercessor, whatever. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and some of the weapon options on these guys are downright awful. Like all the combi weapons for 10 points apiece, that is way too much for a unit. It's not good. The assault weapons on them are all very expensive. You pay a lot for a Thunderhammer on them. I guess they didn't want you to accidentally kit it out as an assault squad. Right? They didn't want you to have like a Thunderhammer on the Sergeant and a bunch of like combi flamers and like end up running in.
Or meltas, yeah.
So I guess they just priced those out so that you didn't end up playing them the wrong way.
Very strange.
But
very strange.
The grav, I'm so surprised. We thought it was going to be bad, but when you really look at it, it's the definitive answer.
Heavy bolters, but yeah, that's what we did. So we've done that research for you guys, so you don't have to do it. So hopefully that was helpful as far as knowing what Wargear to take in which situation, which ones you can just kind of put in your bits box on the shelf for a while. And so hopefully that was very informative because we definitely put a lot of work and thought into it.
Yeah, if there's any units we didn't cover, we'd love to see them in the chat.
It's a big book.
Yeah, it's a big book. We didn't go through them all, but these were kind of the big heavy hitters. So put them in the chat and we'd love to discuss what you think some of the better Wargear choices are for these other units. And of course, if you haven't seen, we did a video just like this for the Necron Codex, where we covered some of the best Wargear choices there. And there's some really contentious ones there as well. So you're definitely going to want to go and check that out. We've also got a ton more coverage for these books, looking at them from so many different angles. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that great content. And we'll see you in the next video.